Okay, we are recording. So welcome everybody. My name is
Yay.
Donny Lowry, and this is my lovely partner.
Kirk Prime.
And we are delighted to welcome you again to yet another episode of Queer Tribe. And today we are blessed to have our a wonderful guest, Sawyer Massie. And welcome, Sawyer. So glad you're here. And Kirk and I are in San Francisco, and Sawyer's all the way in Texas. So I feel like we're going
My God.
international.
I know it feels that way.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let me tell you a little about Sawyer. Sawyer is an initiate and teacher of Unnamed Path, which is a spiritual tradition for men who love men. His foundation is gay queer spirituality and ecstatic animism. He's a warlock and folk magician. He's also a practitioner of folk magic, folkloric witchcraft, and chaos magic. Alongside his partner, Adam, Sawyer is passionate about connecting, empowering, and supporting men who love men in their spiritual journeys. Wow,
Wow.
that's a mouthful.
So welcome aboard. And what I think the Hindus would say, what an auspicious day
Yes.
for us to have you, because Astra and springtime, and so here you are manifesting for us, all of those things in the flesh. So welcome aboard, Sawyer.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for being here this evening. I'm incredibly honored to share this space, and thank you so much, Kirk and Donny, for allowing me this opportunity to share this. Especially being here with you all is particularly exciting, given that one of my spiritual brothers has been a part of this conversation before, Raven. So being here and carrying on that legacy is a significant honor to me, and it means a lot to share this. So thank you so
Yes.
much for having me.
Yeah,
And
thank you. Thank you.
For those of you who don't know, Ravenwood Moon, I'm sorry,
Moon.
Ravenwood is a beloved who has passed.
Yeah. But was a part of our community as well as the Unnamed Path. So it was lovely to kind of it was a natural bridge to build. So yeah. So let's dive into our three questions as usual that we've been doing for 10 plus years with all the folks. And for those of you who are on the call, just know that there's a whole 10 years of archives that you can listen to men responding to these three questions that we're about to ask Sawyer. So the first question, though, and the juiciest one, I think, is for us to learn about you and to learn about your experience of awakening and the journey. Tell us about that. Tell us stories about how you woke up, or what were the events that surrounded that waking up.
This is actually a very fun question, and one that can go back and forth in a few different ways, because I consider this awakening to be something that happened over time and build up with multiple awakenings, because at the core of how I view spirituality at its basis is its evolutionary nature, and how it moves us forward and where we are in that place and time. But honestly, this does start back in my childhood, very early, understanding that I have this sense of connection to things, to the world outside of myself. I was very much that child that was speaking to the trees and speaking to animals, but speaking to my toys as well. Very much viewing life as something that was much more broad and pervasive than what was just within my specific scope and sphere of engagement, so to say. So this was already something that was very close and dear to me very early, being out in nature. I grew up in a very rural area, and being able to be involved in the processes of how nature does change and what is actually happening around me was always something that really brought me in. But the more that I paid attention to that, the more I noticed that I respond to the world and the world responds to me. And being able to engage in those very intimate and connective ways really propelled me into exploring what it means to be Sawyer. Um, Spirituality, religion in general, was always something that made an appearance in my life broadly. I was raised in a very loosely practiced Southern Baptist home, And while I never found my roots there, I did find that there was something more for me to be engaged in, to partake with that. Although I did, as a matter of fact, very early find churches to be a very terrifying place, but that always really got back to me in that place of spirituality is something that is intimately experienced, intimately lived. So having someone else tell me what that was never quite set right with me.
Hmm.
So as I grew, I noticed that I would have these manifestations of what I would identify as spiritual gifts, which I don't view are distinct to certain people. I believe we all have these things in terms of our extrasensory abilities. And I was very engaged through, for a lack of a better use of term, clairaudient. I was able to hear different things that were very useful to my life, very helpful and beneficial to my day-to-day being. And so the more that I leaned into that, the more that I was like, oh, okay, so there is something happening around me,
Hmm.
something going on, something within this world that is calling, and call it spirits if you want, call it energy. But the reality of the matter was, is I was being helped and it was fulfilling me in ways that I was not truly able to fully grasp until I moved further into that. But getting to the place I am now spiritually was something that evolved with me as I moved through my life. I grew up in that Southern Baptist household, never really connected with that. But as I approached my preteens, early teen years, really started to find and engage my interest with the occult, with witchcraft, with magic, with um, paganism. And that's what led me to jump off into animism. And that was the first great awakening of sorts that you could say that occurred in my life, because I really found a place that resonated with me, that told me that there was something more than just right here, and more than that, more than a promise for the future. It was something I could engage with right now.
Hmm.
But there was still something missing in that. I was finding myself, but I still did not see me there. Um, During that time, though, there was also a lot of turmoil and issue happening in my life. I have grown up in a very abusive household in multiple ways: sexual, mental, physical, emotional, religious. And my mother, or the woman who I thought was my mother, when she unalived herself when I was 14 years old, I was one of the people that she blamed and wrote a very long letter around that. And
Hmm.
that very much
Hmm.
put me in a place that I was not able to really comprehend or process, because outside of her viewing that, I viewed myself as responsible for her death because I wanted it. And that's a place I had to come to, is that I was so unhappy and so miserable in my own life that all I wanted was her to go away. And then she
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And I took the thing that I loved the most and punished myself with it. I punished myself with spirituality, specifically with religion. But that also led me into further exploring and finding myself, because at that time I put everything that I was truly interested in, everything that I was truly engaged and moved to explore, kind of on this back burner, not even on the back burner, but almost trying to deny it. And that's whenever I tried to begin actively pursuing Orthodox Judaism. And
Hmm.
I do everything very wholly. I'm either fully engaged or I'm not engaged at all. And that
Okay.
is usually one of my crosses to bear in finding the happy medium. But I was very involved with what this looked like for me. And although I very much understood that this is something I was doing as a sense of punishment and a sense of normality, I refused to say that was a completely wasted period, because I did find a lot of beauty and a lot of power there.
Yeah.
And although it was not the sense of belonging I was looking for, I did find something that was nourishing me at that time. And I very much take pride in what I've learned, what I found there, and how that propelled me forward.
Hmm.
But nonetheless, it was an experience that was inauthentic to me. It was not something that was truly feeding my soul. It was feeding my pain and feeding my hurt and keeping that at bay, keeping me from having to truly engage what that meant for me.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I moved through those channels. I went through, and I had already been out for a long time at this point, because I did come out as a gay man at 13, in a very
Oh.
small town, 700 people.
Wow.
But I was very aware that this was problematic by their standards. And I did not want to enter anything from an inauthentic place. I did not want to disrespect myself, but I also did not want to disrespect that religion or those people that hold that, because just because I do not believe that does not mean other people do not wholeheartedly believe that in and of themselves. So I very closely remembered having that conversation with the rabbi who I was working with at that time, and having to tell him, look, I am a gay man. This is something that I understand is not something that your religion really supports. So before we go any further, I do want to have this conversation with you as what this looks like. Obviously, the boundaries were set on both sides, but in and of itself, that experience was not devastating. I knew that that was going to be a point of an end, but I also found that this rabbi was also heart healing in that way. He did not attempt to discourage me or to tell me that I was wrong or to tell me what I was feeling was wrong. It was a matter of, okay, what do you need next? And as I sat with that information, I found that it was leaning back into what truly made me happy, where I felt the most fulfilled in my life. And that had always been those occult spaces, whatever way you want to take that, because in and of itself, pagan is not a destination that I directly find myself, because I very much more lean into the animistic sense. But as I explored that, I started to slowly come back into what it meant to be Sawyer. And just an FYI for that, my legal name is Michael. I'm in the process of changing to Sawyer. So I was going through this as Michael. But it was during that time that I found the podcasts for the Unnamed Path. And when I tell you, something just awoke inside of me, I ran with it. It became this fuel to every passion that I had. But then it also hit this kind of wall. I did not have this sense of community of where to take that, because as I was further exploring, when I thought back to those early years of discovering what it meant to practice witchcraft, or that you could even be a witch, I never found myself fully in that. And that's because a big part of who I am is my gay identity, is my queer identity. And while I found those places more open, I did not find me there. And I very much understood that this current and this way that I move and experience my world was not reflected in those realities. And I'm not one to ever force myself into a place to try to find where I fit. I want to find where I thrive. And that I do not say as an attack on any tradition, religion, spirituality from this point. That was just a matter of, I did not see the queer centric elements there. And so as I continued to lean into that work, I discovered so many amazing authors. I leaned into Toby Johnson's work. I leaned into actually the very first book that I had ever read that really set this path for me was it was one of his, but then there was I'm so sorry. I'm pulling a blank on it at the moment, but
He'll come back.
There were so many queer theories that just really brought me back to who I am. Visionary Love. There we go. Visionary Love. A spirit book of gay mythology and transmutational fairy by Mitch Walker. It spoke to directly what I was looking for. It was speaking to, I don't have to fit into these fertility cycle models. I do not have to fit into these heterocentric, heteronormative ways of being. Oh, there's an entire element that speaks to me and what it means to move as a gay man, as a queer man in this world. And I ran with that. I coupled that with what I found from the Unnamed Path. And I found that despite this, I don't want to say broken in terms of different pieces moving about, but in all of these different elements coming together, I found that's what I was looking for. gay spiritual foundation is what my home was. That's where I needed to feel safe. That's where I needed to feel happy, where I needed to feel powerful and in my own sense of control.
Mhm.
And that really changed the paradigm of how I see the world, how I engage the world, that I and we are not second class citizens. We're not side characters to someone else's story. We are our own. And let's live that, let's celebrate that. Let's bring these together,
Mm.
because that's one of the beauty and beautiful aspects that I find about this, is that we are so diverse and we are so connected. And although we come together through our shared sense of connection and being because of how we love, both through the joys and our pains, what it means to live that way comes to life through each of us in our own specific, unique way.
Mhm.
So that threw gasoline on the fire, just that set
Mhm.
everything ablaze. And that's where I was really able to feel like I could move, because I was like, it's not a one size fits all. And I had never been able to make my peace with that. So whenever I was able to really bring in that I can celebrate and honor myself, but then I can celebrate and honor my brother and my sibling as they're going on this journey, that gave me everything that I needed, that I didn't know that I was looking for,
Mm.
because that's
Mm.
where it came back to, is that this is my journey.
Mm.
Nothing that I do is alone. Everything that I do is propelling me on a path forward that is bringing the experiences of our brothers and our siblings that have carried and had terms opposed upon them throughout their lives that did not necessarily reflect our reality. But that this is all coming together through me, through us, and how we're going to take this forward for future generations to live and express this in their own ways, to bring new words and new concepts and new ideas that are going to be so far beyond what I could potentially comprehend. That just made my heart explode. And that set the foundation of how I want to move through this world, how I see the world, and how I want to engage with others.
Mm.
And so finding myself in others and seeing that reflected back in me set the entire course of what it meant for me to be
Mm.
a spiritual being, to find the paths that really moved and spoke to me. And then the more that I went further down that road, it brought me back to that place of, this is a point of discovery, ongoing discovery. And this actually led into a little bit of the work that I did, because I hold a BA in anthropology with a minor in sociology. So I'm very enthralled by the past and our history that had led us here. But one of the things that I've always been very careful of is I don't like looking to the past for validation or justification for our existence.
Mhm.
And this character, because I very much want to hold the space for everybody that has come before me. But I don't want their experiences to be lumped in necessarily exactly to mine, because one, they were not, and vice versa. So I want to honor what
Mm.
was, also what is. And
Mhm.
so as I did that, it brought me into this place of really sitting down and coming to a place of consolidation within myself, of making peace with what it means to be a gay queer man, to be someone that is proud of who they are and
Mhm.
proud of the history that I carry. Because that's where all of this came back down to, is, again, I'm not alone through this. I'm carrying the history of my brothers and my siblings.
Yeah.
I want to do right by them in the best way that I possibly can. And so as I went further into the works of Will Roscoe and Harry Hay and Toby Johnson and Mark Thompson, and really going down these paths, I started to truly find me. And that's where I came back into the unnamed path, because I had found the podcast a decade before I had ever actually gotten involved with the actual organization.
Wow.
And that actually, in and of itself, became its own serendipitous experience, in that there, on top of my world already being what it was, in 2018, I discovered through Ancestry DNA, I was switched at birth.
Oh,
And that led me into a very
wow.
cognitive dissonance, so to say. There was a lot of existential crisis, and bringing me back into, oh, all the work I've done now is that mine? Is that someone else's? What does it mean to be me again?
Yeah, wow.
So whenever I started to sit with that and come back into it, I was like, okay, you know what? I need to take a break from everything. I need to step back from social spheres, from the world for a little bit and center back into myself. So I was going to delete my Facebook. And it just so happened the day I was going to delete it, the man that became my teacher, my initiator in the unnamed path, who himself lived in Texas, posted, I'm starting another round of classes that day. It couldn't have gotten any better or any close. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to fill this out. I'm going to send, and then I'll still delete my Facebook the moment that I get any kind of word. It took months, and that was a nerve-wracking time. I was like, you know what? This is just a fluke. You know what? If I don't get accepted, it's fine. But then I got my approval letter, my acceptance, and I went ahead and I deleted my Facebook. It was kind of funny because I instantly had to come right back because that was where our big social sphere was. But it changed the entire trajectory of my spiritual path and my spiritual engagement. And I threw myself into it. I had waited, I had searched, I had looked for this for so long that I wasn't going to squander this opportunity. This was something that I had always seen myself moving down. So whenever the opportunity presented itself, I took it, and I didn't just take it, I ran with it, and I threw myself completely into it. And that truly led me into fortifying all of those pieces that I had already discovered that were kind of continuous in my mind because of trying to make peace with all of those existential places. But I leaned into vulnerability. I leaned into trusting my brothers, trusting my siblings. I leaned into learning to love myself. And everything that I found there had only fueled that fire that was already burning so brightly to where I wanted others to have this. I wanted others to be able to find that sense of fulfillment for themselves. And not necessarily directly even with the unnamed path. If they found it, great, that's wonderful. I'm happy. Let's talk about it. But I truly found that my drive and what I want to do in this world is to help men who love men, or people who love people, women who love women, our community, our specific queer communities, find themselves and their sense of empowerment, not through someone else's stories, not through potentialities, but what is and what can be and where they and that has become the entire path that I continue to move down now. So that has been the ultimate run of what my spiritual journey has looked like.
Oh, wow. How wonderful, how juicy.
Mhm.
I think of, as I hear you and kind of leading the next question even, is how much all of these experiences though were like Native American or First Nation people often talk about soul retrievals, about gathering the parts of themselves that have been, disenfranchised or fragmented or energetically ejected from us because we've been threatened or unsafe. And your whole journey has been about healing yourself and gathering back all those parts and becoming so fully alive in this journey called the unnamed path. Just delicious. So thank you. Yeah.
No, thank you so much for that. And actually, one of the early experiences that I have that I hold that is truly one of it's my pivotal moment of shaping what my spiritual identity would come to be. And this actually came back to circle whenever I was moving through my apprenticeship. But when I was in kindergarten, I don't remember what the event or the game or whatever it was that you were winning, but I remember there was a prize you got. And I remember seeing this rainbow heart eraser. And I wanted it so I was like, it was cute, it was pretty, but all of the colors and rainbows just made me happy. So I worked and I worked and I worked and I got it. But the very, very, very first thing I did is I took that eraser and I ran home and I buried it at the foot at this oak tree
Oh,
in my backyard. It might have been my front yard, depending on the angle you were wanting to look
Yeah.
at it. But I was like, I buried it at the foot of this oak tree.
Wow.
And I really didn't think anything of it. This was not something I was told to do. It was not something it was something that just felt right.
Wow.
But whenever I was moving through my apprenticeship experience, in all of these hurt places and all of these places I had pulled back into myself or were attempting to pull back into myself and were trying to integrate them in, I found myself in this complete kind of numbness and emptiness and not really sure how to move forward. And I just leaned into this experience that can ultimately be described as a demonic experience. I use the term spiritual.
Damn fucking.
Sensitive to other cultures and where the term shaman really comes from. But I was like, I had this shamanic journey where my heart was eaten and digested into the earth, through the earth, into the world. Brought me back to that connection
some of the Santa Barbara
with my heart and being able to, that moment, being brought back together into this one shared space where my heart now was the heart that I buried then. It was eaten, it was consumed, and I was shit in through the earth into the underworld.
Yeah.
To find myself again. And I brought that back in, and that's what set the entire path forward for me to really start integrating and bringing myself back into wholeness. Because that is the name of the game, is finding these places and pieces of myself, of ourselves, of integrating these, not casting them off, not cutting them off because they've died so long ago. No, finding them, forgiving myself for not understanding what was happening at a point in time, and bringing myself back into the totality of what it means to be me. And again, the more I continue to do that, the more it just fuels my energy, my want, my desire, my need to help other men find this for themselves, because I can't walk this journey for others, but I can happily hold the space for them to do so.
Absolutely.
That's what I want. I want us to be able to be fulfilled in every facet, every avenue of our lives, not just in pieces that we break off or we section off and can make our peace with. No, I want us to thrive. I want us to be so bright that it blinds other people. I want our reality to not mirror others, because honestly, and excuse my language, fuck that. I want us to have what we have and celebrate it to its fullest extent. I want us to be confident in what we carry, in our history, in our lore, and us being living ancestors, us carrying memory, us building memory, us being part of what it means to be in that historical, cultural, spiritual, religious identity. We're there, and I want to find us there.
Yeah. And who would have known a rainbow eraser would be buried in the ground? I mean, how intuitively, it's kind of like I talk about my experiences of having mystical moments, but they always took me back to nature, that connection or that descent into the underworld to rise up. So yeah, how delicious. So let me kind of, in the venture of time, we've now, so this is your formation, and in that formation, you've already started to give us some clues, but do you see us as a queer tribe? How do you see us as a queer tribe? Talk about that a little bit.
I do see us as a queer tribe. I have to speak about this in different ways because, at least as I work through the tradition that I'm involved in, we are currently, specifically, actively, singularly working with men who love men. That is not the end of the journey, though, and that's not been the end of who we are. We have always been more than that, and we are making more spaces for that and allowing these, not allowing, but holding space for these mysteries to be continuing to be revealed, because I can only go so far as a man who loves men, but men who love men and women, people who love people, women who love women, then getting into entire asexual identities. I was like, these are mysteries that others have to bring forward. I can only go so far in terms of understanding. I can't live those experiences, but I can share whatever I I can in order for you to have the skills and the confidence and the power to bring these forward.
Yeah.
So I really do view us as a tribe. I view us as a greater sense of community.
Yeah.
And this does come back into looking in those historical senses. And whenever I break this down, I was like, I really look to the 80s with the beginning and the emergence and the ongoing of the AIDS epidemic, with the care and the role that lesbians took in really providing care for us, holding spaces for us when no one else would.
Yeah.
And then that stark juxtaposition of how we actually engage each other now. And while honoring the spaces for us as men who love men and them as women who love women, to have what we have independently and honoring our mysteries, but then being so hurt in terms of seeing that sense of separation when I was like, well, we both carry a queer gay energy in us. We held each other close when no one else would touch us, when nobody else would want to be around us.
Yeah.
So my priorities, whenever I look at this, it very much does fall within that scope of men who love men, but that can never be the end of what my story is. I want to really bring us back into those spaces of honoring ourselves as a community, as a people, because that's part, again, what I had mentioned before, is that we have that great sense of diversity. And I think that's our greatest strength and our power, is that we have these places that we can come back together while each carrying our own distinct current. And there's many streams that run off from a river, that run off from a lake, that run off from an ocean.
Yeah.
They all come or lead back into this. Let's do that. Let's find that. And so whenever I speak of what it means to be a queer tribe, at my foundations, I am speaking of men who love men, because this is a scope, a sphere, a group of people that I can relate to, that my experiences can match in certain ways in the way I've engaged the world. But I don't think that's the end of it, or at least it doesn't have to be. And that I do not mean as any kind of critique for anybody, because we all move and we are guided in our own ways to go through. But whenever I think of a queer tribe, that's really what I'm thinking of, is bringing us back to a place of not necessarily a shared identity, because we all have our own. And that's why I'd really like to think of this in terms of those that we claim, beyond just those that are imposed. But because I was like, my identities, I claim gay, queer, but I also claim faggot. And I also understand how many people can have great issue and offense and hurt from that word.
True.
That's mine. That's not something that I'm
Yeah.
going to expect anyone else to hold or carry.
Yeah.
But I'm going to hold that space for whoever to carry theirs.
Yeah.
And that's where it means to be that queer tribe for me, is being able to hold that space regardless of our difference, regardless of where we're ultimately being moved to, because we're all being moved to the same place. We're being moved back to the grave. That's just reality. That's just, we live, we're going to die. And then, at least how I view things, life continues. But the reality of this situation is we're all moving towards a singular destination.
Yeah.
Let's honor where we are in that journey all the way through that. So I want to meet you on your level, not necessarily on mine. I want to meet you where you are.
Yeah.
I want to find, I can only be where I am at any moment. So I need to hold that space for my brothers, for my siblings, to find themselves, for this to be the journey it is. And that's why, as I honestly, we talk about messy and how bad that can get. I'm here for a messy journey. That's life. That's what it means to find yourself, to go through this, to be in those uncomfortable places, to find your truth.
Yeah.
Give me your mess. And from that, let's make gold. I was like, let's honestly work some alchemy. Let's change this into beauty. Let's change this into art. Let's change it into magic, because that's where magic is for me, is in that uplifting and that changing of your life, not just making your circumstances bearable, but making it an art life, making it something worthwhile for you in whatever that means. So Queer Tribe is absolutely something I hold to, something that I think that binds us together through through that shared, and this is something that we teach in the Unnamed Path, it's our unique experiences, that shared sense of love that we engage in across time, across space, across cultures, that brings us back together.
Mm.
And I see that, I feel that, I've known that, and I want to continue running with that.
Delicious. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, wow. Wow. Well, it's great segue into the last question. I'll even frame though, or piggyback on what you just said, which is, for me, I mean, our work, which is kind of very parallel in some ways, but is very archetypal. And so the archetypes that we teach about, though, are really archetypes about the Great Awakening. So that we're in the midst of another great awakening. Every generation has their great awakenings, but as queer folk, I believe all tribes bring to the table the propensity for the healing of the planet together, and all humankind and all living beings. So that we're not a mistake. We're purposely part of. We need to be the queer tribe. That's my take. But I kind of hear that reflected back in some of what you said. Segueing now from that comment to the last one, which is, what's your vision for us? What as a movement, as a people, as gay men, or as the whole spectrum, what's your vision or visions?
I think visions might be a more appropriate term in how I view this, because ultimately I have no grand vision for what it means for us to be a people, to be a person, to move through this. And that's not to say that I don't have my wishes or hopes for us. That's that I very much hold that every individual matters. The collective means nothing without the individuals inside of it.
Yeah.
So in honoring my vision for what it means for us to move forward, it means to celebrate what this looks like for you, to heal and bring these places back to you to find what that means, because that's how I think that we ultimately get to where we want to go individually and collectively. Because on my greatest, yes, I want us to be so open and so proud and so happy, but so fulfilled with what we have, that we're not looking to these external sources to cherry pick where we might be in something. No, I want our whole story to be ours.
Yeah.
I want us to reawaken a sense of being that honestly is brand new, because again, terms like gay, queer, these are relatively new. So what it means to live in those ways is not historically necessarily applicable. And I'm not going to impose my terms on my brothers from the past or from history. I can see our similarities, but I'm having to live with where I am, and I'm going to honor where they were. And I think that's how we move into that vision of going forward, is that uncovering a reality that is ours, uncovering a lore, uncovering a mystery that speaks to who we are. And this is something that I find in the Unnamed Path, whereas like one of our big things is that we have our deities are very much spiritual. They're not just archetypes. They do exist. That's what we hold, but they don't exist within any cultural pantheon. They cannot be substituted by any cultural pantheon. They are the collective experiences of our realities. So God is gay in the Unnamed Path. But I don't think that our story is the only story. I want so much lore to be out there that we have choice, that we have option. I want there to be a world that, oh, I'm looking for this. Well, you know what? Here you go. I have a ton of resources for you. Here's this tradition that is heavily queer. Here's this tradition that specifically gets into more gay queer elements. Here's this tradition that is more encompassing. I want us to be able to, whenever I think about our vision for the future, it's very much having our option to be as diverse as we are. It
Yeah.
is finding those places that we don't have to be in competition or to hold that I'm right, this is wrong. No, as one of my famous sayings, because I can swear like a sailor, fuck this, fuck that, and fuck you.
No.
Yeah, I was like, no, I want you to find what's going to make you sing. And if that's where I am,
Yeah.
great, let's talk about it. But if not, I want to hold that space for you to find where you are going to be fulfilled. I
Beautiful.
want you to bring forward a mystery. So whenever I really get into a vision, it's not so clearly defined because mine can only extend to me.
Yeah.
I don't want my brothers or my siblings to necessarily reflect my reality. Outside of, I want us to be safe, I want us to be healthy, I want us to be happy, I want us to thrive. Whatever that looks like for us on an individual level, perfect. That's what I want. I don't have a unifying theory because to me, that takes away our magic, our beauty, and our power. It
Wow.
gives us back our spaces and times of being where we are, honoring in that space, and healing ourselves there. So, if I really had to bring this into a singular idea, I want to heal this community. I don't have a sense of what that means outside of
Yeah.
helping us find ourselves, find those pieces that we hid in shame, that we hid in fear, that we didn't know that we hid because we hid them so early.
Yeah.
I want to, I want us to be healthy. That is my greatest vision for us is I want us to be healthy, whatever that means for us on an individual level. I don't want to impose myself onto anybody else because I very much recognize where my end stops, but
Yeah.
where I can see yours and mine coming together, and I want that intermingling, and I want that beauty of being whole. I
Yeah.
want us to, I want us to thrive. I want us to thrive in whatever that means for us. I want us to sing. I want us to dance. I want us to love. I want us to fuck. I want us to be happy.
Yeah.
At the end of that, that all comes back into health and healthy. And what does that mean for us? Because I refuse to just look at that on a biological level because we all have different ideas of what it means to be happy. And that might not necessarily coincide with medical standards. And that might not necessarily coincide with other views of society of what it means to be a happy, healthy, well-adjusted individual. No, I want us to honor where we are, to hold the space for us
Beautiful.
to find that
Well,
and celebrate it.
well, yeah. Thank you. Wow, that's pretty powerful stuff. Yeah, thank you, thank you. I'm reminded one of my teachers, a mystic. He taught us the word education comes from the Latin word educare. And educare doesn't mean to educate as we think. It's about drawing out. What I hear is that your work, my work, our work is to draw out who is our authentic self, our true self, our whole self, all the parts of ourselves, and celebrate that. And that will just have ripple effects of healing and magic for not only us, but the whole world. So juicy, juicy, juicy. Thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you. And thank you for allowing me to share that. Because I can very much understand how that can get a little bit even complicated in its own ways of being like, okay, well, what does it mean for everybody to view that? Well, like,
Yeah.
we don't all hold the same worldview or perspective of what it means to be integrated in a community, but
Great.
it's that sense of conversation and connection and not moving from that place of judgment, but a place of learning, a
Yeah.
place of growing.
Yeah.
That's where healing lies for me. It's not about being who's right or wrong. I hate
Yeah.
those words. It gets into the good and bad territory way too fast.
Yeah.
I want to learn what your perspective is. And I'm not saying that's something I have to share, but I can learn a new way of being and I can hold that space and recognize this is something that's in the world. I don't need to look to the past for justification. It's here right now. It's here
Yeah.
right now, and I'm going to celebrate that. And
Thank you.
as long as we're moving in that sense of authentic being,
Yeah.
what can we do but to celebrate you in that?
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, we have just a couple minutes left. So I'm wondering, we can have anybody unmute if they would like, raise your hand and unmute yourself. If you have a comment or a question before we wrap up with Sawyer today.
Kirk said to raise your hand, but I may not be able to see you. I apologize. So if you have a question, just unmute yourself and scream it out.
Be that authentic, true you.
Yes,
There
yes,
we go,
I
Adam.
did see a hand. Yeah, just go ahead, unmute and tell us. What's your question?
Um, Thank you, Sawyer. That was amazing.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, what are some common misconceptions or challenges that beginners might face when starting a spiritual or magical journey?
At least whenever approaching this from a perspective of men who loves men, is I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that we don't have our own lore, we don't have our own history, and that's where I think it's necessary to really expand what it means to live and be spiritual. Because again, at least as I found this, it wasn't any kind of consolidated information. I mean, the unnamed path, once I got to it, yes, wonderful. But that wasn't the only thing that brought me here. Like I said, Visionary Love was the very first book that I read that set off an entire path. But then there was Will Roscoe and Toby Johnson and Randy Connor and so many other people that wrote about what it means to throughout history had these elements of gayness or queerness seen. So I think that one of the biggest misconceptions is assuming that we don't have our own history or lore because it's not brought into one book or one centralized place. No. Unfortunately, as I guess if you want to use that word with it, as we tend to have to do a lot of our own pick ourselves up by the bootstraps kind of mentality and go and look for what we're wanting to find. But once we do, it's out there. And it's not just one person who's saying it. There are tons and tons of amazing, beautiful, powerful voices saying these things that are truly moving us into ways of identifying who we are unapologetically so. So I think that's one of the biggest is that we don't have our own or that we're building off of others because that's not the case. We absolutely can build off of others just like others can build off of us. This is an interactive world, but at the end of the day, we do have our distinct currents. So I think that's where this is that really expanding what it means to live a spiritual life, to be a spiritual being, but also I think it moves out from moving from those places of looking at things in terms of power, in terms of love, in terms of healing, in terms of that sense of growth. Because once we start really getting into those, we find a lot of where we are. Awesome and Bone, really breaking down the history of different cultures and myths and lore. Visionary Love, providing a framework that very much gets into the Jungian psychological, but really bridges that psychological and magical kind of perspective. Andrew Raymer, who I believe is going by Eli now, so I do not mean any disrespect by using Andrew. But I was like providing an entire basis of framework that becomes or can become a spiritual practice, which actually was and is a foundational text in the Unnamed Path, which influenced our founder, which has since become required reading for all of our students and apprentices. So I think that's where it comes down to is thinking that we don't have our own, and that fear that comes around that is because we do have a rich history. We do have a rich lore. We just have to look for it. We have to put in a little bit more legwork in order to find what we're looking for. But the more we move into that, the more we can have a little bit more ease of access there.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, drawing it out from the inside, as well as knowing that we've always been here throughout all ages and all history. And part of what I see us doing is that reclaiming on so many different levels that we have always been in every tribe, every culture, from all time, and that those histories have been oftentimes oppressed, suppressed, or dismissed. And we're starting to bring the treasures back, while your wisdom of but what they experienced is what they experienced, and who we are now, we can piggyback off of that. But who are we now? So living in the question rather than, oh, we're trying to reclaim something. I love this conversation, is so juicy. So thank you. And thank you, Adam, for asking the question. And I see we're really out of time. So unless somebody's got something just really, really burning, anybody have anything really, really burning?
Who's burning?
Well, we're all burning, but good.
And I was like, I will be sending out my contact information after this as well. I very actively encourage conversation. If you would like to speak about the unnamed path,
Excellent.
about anything, please contact me. I would love to chat with you.
Great. Thank you. And thank you so much for your journey, for your service, for your work, and for what you guys are bringing through the unnamed path that is a treasure. So I say
you so much.
namaste to all of you from us, and know that the next Queer Tribe call is with our beloved Adam Black. And we just got a date today.
We did.
Do you remember what it
I don't
is?
remember.
I know. Adam, are you still there?
I have a hard-
It is going to be on the 12th at 4 p.m. Pacific.
There we go.
Yay!
So it's not even up on the website. It'll be up on the website on Tuesday. So we'll start promoting it then. But so if you haven't had enough of the duo, there is yet more to come. So thank you. And thank you all for being on the call, whether live or are you watching this as a recording. And we love you all. And
Namaste.
Thank you so much for this space. It was amazing being here with you all, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Adam. And thank all of you out there in TV land.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.